You know Lurch, the towering butler with a chilling "you echoing through the Addams family mansion. But behind the eerie smile was a man fighting battles far scarier than any TV monster. Ted Cassidy's real story isn't just about fame, it's about loneliness, heartbreak, betrayal, and dreams left to die in silence. A genius trapped by his own body, a star crushed by the very fame he sought. Today, we uncover a truth hidden for decades: the abandoned home, the broken family, and a fortune lost to time. Think you know Lurch? Think again, you never truly knew Ted Cassidy. Before we dive into video, please subscribe our channel. Ted Cassidy's story began like no other. From the time he was a little boy, it was clear he was different. While other children were learning how to fit in, Ted was already standing out, literally. By the age of 14, he was over 6 feet tall. His tall, thin frame made him a target for teasing at school. Everywhere he went, people stared. Some whispered, some laughed. Deep down, Ted felt isolated, as if he didn't belong anywhere. It wasn't easy carrying that weight at such a young age, but Ted wasn't just tall, he was also incredibly smart. He excelled in his studies and showed a strong spirit that many around him couldn't see. While the world judged him for his appearance, Ted quietly built dreams bigger than anyone could imagine. He found comfort in sports like basketball and football, where his height became a strength instead of a weakness. Even when life tried to pull him down, Ted refused to break. He made a silent promise to himself one day: the world would know him not for how he looked, but for what he could do. This burning determination would shape the rest of his life. Ted Cassidy was more than just a tall teenager. He was a smart and hardworking young man with big goals. Even though he was often teased for his size, Ted didn't let the bullying stop him. He focused on his studies and surprised many with how intelligent and thoughtful he was. At a very young age, he was already ahead of others in school, both academically and emotionally. He had a sharp mind and a quiet determination that made him stand out in more ways than one. In high school, Ted didn't hide from the world, he stepped into it. He joined both the football and basketball teams, using his height and strength to his advantage. Sports gave him a place where he could finally feel accepted and confident. His talent on the court caught attention, but what people didn't always see was the discipline and drive behind it. Later, when Ted went to college, he kept pushing himself. He became involved in student government and even worked as a lifeguard during summers. Ted was determined to prove he could do more, be more. Behind that towering frame was a young man filled with ambition, ready to build a life full of meaning. After finishing college, Ted Cassidy stepped into the real world, carrying big dreams on his shoulders. His powerful voice, deep and unforgettable, opened the first real door for him. Ted began working as a radio DJ at WFAA-AM in Dallas. His voice stood out on the airwaves, and listeners quickly recognized the talent behind the microphone. It wasn't long before he found himself in front of the camera too, playing a quirky alien character on a local TV show. It was a small role, but for Ted, it was a start, a tiny glimpse of the bigger world he had always dreamed about. Life took a serious turn when Ted was working at the station on the day President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. He ended up interviewing eyewitnesses live on air, a moment that showed his calmness under pressure and his hidden skills as a broadcaster. Through it all, Ted kept exploring his talents. He even played the organ at a local cafe to make extra money. Every small job, every little opportunity, Ted treated with respect. He knew that no matter how small the stage, every moment counted. Step by step, Ted was slowly building the path that would soon lead him to fame. Ted Cassidy's big break came in 1964, and it changed his life forever. He was cast as Lurch, the tall and mysterious butler in the Addams Family TV show. At first, Lurch wasn't even supposed to speak. He was meant to be a silent character in the background. But during filming, Ted decided to ad-lib a simple line. "You rang?" The producers loved it so much that they changed the whole idea of the character. From that moment, Lurch became one of the most unforgettable parts of the show, and Ted became a star. Ted's deep voice, slow movements, and towering height made Lurch both scary and lovable. Audiences couldn't get enough of him. Ted also played another hidden role on the show. He was the disembodied hand known as Thing. Though many didn't realize it, Ted's real hand brought even more life to the spooky mansion. For Ted, it felt like everything he had worked for was finally paying off. He was no longer just the tall guy, he was a true star. But behind the success, Ted would soon discover that fame came with its own set of struggles, some that would weigh heavier than he ever expected. Becoming Lurch made Ted Cassidy a household name, but behind the smiles and applause, fame brought a quiet kind of pain. While the world saw a lovable, spooky character on screen, Ted felt something different. He began to feel trapped, not just in the role of Lurch, but in the way Hollywood saw him. Casting directors looked at his height and deep voice and gave him the same kinds of roles over and over again. Monsters, villains, silent giants. Ted wanted more. He had studied drama, trained hard, and dreamed of serious roles that showed his full talent. But Hollywood only saw his size, not his soul. This constant typecasting slowly wore him down. In interviews, he spoke honestly about feeling like a big dumb oaf in the eyes of others. Even fans sometimes treated him like the character, not the man. The sadness grew deeper as he realized that no matter how hard he worked, people only remembered one thing: Lurch. What had started as a dream come true was now beginning to feel like a cage. Ted was famous, yes, but he was also misunderstood. And that quiet frustration would follow him through the rest of his career. While Ted Cassidy was building a name in Hollywood, he was also trying to build something far more important: a family. He had married his college sweetheart, Margaret Helen, in 1956, and together they had 2 children, a son named Sean and a daughter named Cameron. At home, Ted was not Lurch. He was a father, a husband, a man trying to live a normal life away from the spotlight. But fame has a way of sneaking into private spaces. Ted's growing success in the entertainment world came with long hours, constant pressure, and the weight of public attention. Slowly, it began to take a toll on his marriage. The man who once dreamed of balance was now caught between 2 worlds, one where he was loved by fans, and another where he struggled to stay connected to the people he loved most. In 1975, after nearly 2 decades together, Ted and Margaret divorced. It was a quiet heartbreak, one that didn't make headlines but cut deep. Despite their separation, Ted always remained close to his children. But the pain of losing his family life, combined with the struggles in his career, added to the emotional weight he carried mostly in silence. Behind Ted Cassidy's powerful presence and deep voice was a condition that silently shaped his entire life: acromegaly. It's a rare disorder caused by the body producing too much growth hormone. That's why Ted grew so tall, had large hands and feet, and a face that stood out. But acromegaly doesn't just affect how someone looks. It also brings serious health problems like joint pain, arthritis, and heart issues. Many fans admired Ted's slow, lumbering walk as Lurch, thinking it was part of the act. But in reality, it may have been caused by the pain in his bones and joints. The physical discomfort was real. Yet Ted rarely spoke about it. He didn't want pity, he wanted respect for his work, not sympathy for his condition. Emotionally, acromegaly was even harder. As his features changed, Ted often felt disconnected from his own reflection. He once admitted feeling like people saw him as a circus attraction, not a real person. It was a lonely place to be famous, but not understood. Still, Ted carried his pain quietly, showing up for roles, doing his best, and hoping one day he'd be seen for more than just his size. As the years passed, Ted Cassidy's health began to decline. The condition he had lived with all his life, acromegaly, had started to affect his heart. Doctors discovered a non-cancerous tumor growing around it, a dangerous sign that couldn't be ignored. In January 1979, Ted underwent open-heart surgery in hopes of removing the tumor and giving him a new chance at life. At first, things seemed to go well. He returned home, hopeful and healing. But just days later, serious complications set in. Ted was rushed back to the hospital. Despite the doctor's efforts, his condition worsened. On January 6, 1979, Ted Cassidy passed away. He was only 46 years old. His death shocked his fans, friends, and especially his children. He had so much life left to live, so many dreams still waiting. His ashes were scattered in his backyard, a peaceful place he had loved. Ted passing wasn't just the end of an actor's career, it was the loss of a man who had fought quietly and bravely his whole life. A man who wanted to be more than a role, more than a voice. A man who deserved more time. When Ted Cassidy passed away, he didn't leave behind fame and fortune in the way many expect from Hollywood stars. His estimated net worth at the time was between $800,000 and $1 million, a decent amount, but modest by celebrity standards. Adjusted for today, it would be a few $1,000,000. But what mattered more than money was what his life stood for: dedication, strength, and quiet dignity. Ted lived in a peaceful mid-century home in Woodland Hills, far from the glamour of Beverly Hills. After his death, that home stood quietly, a symbol of a man who had once filled it with music, laughter, and love. His two children, Sean and Cameron, inherited the house and his estate. Both later became attorneys, a sign that Ted had passed on more than just his name. He had passed on his strength, values, and determination. Though Ted didn't receive any money from the ongoing reruns of The Addams Family, his impact lived on. His characters, especially Lurch, continued to entertain millions long after his death. But for those who knew him, Ted Cassidy's true legacy wasn't his voice or his height, it was the heart he put into everything he did. It's impossible not to wonder, what if Ted Cassidy had lived longer? What more could he have achieved if life had given him just a few more years? Ted spent most of his career fighting to be seen for his true talent, not just his height or his deep voice. He dreamed of playing serious roles, of showing the world that he was more than a character behind makeup and costumes. If he had lived, perhaps he would have found that one perfect role, the role that would have made Hollywood finally see the depth of his talent. Maybe he would have starred in dramatic films, taken on complex characters, or even directed stories that mattered to him. Instead, the world lost him too soon. Ted's story reminds us that sometimes the brightest stars are the ones we understand only after they're gone. He gave everything he had, his voice, his strength, and his heart, to a world that often didn't fully see him. Today, Ted Cassidy lives on through the characters he brought to life, and through the quiet legacy he left behind, a legacy of strength, persistence, and dreams that refuse to die.